you split the funding on that, $25 million from reversions, and that's specified in footnote 2A, and $12 million from SIPA. Then we have $1 million for the Jackson Outreach Center, private funds for the Enzi Center, and $7.5 million for the Helibase Complex. The footnotes I think I've touched on. On page 9, top of page 9, these are all agency funds generated from fees at our state parks, and you're authorizing for outdoor recreation, the territorial prison, water facilities in Quebec.
If we can just go back to page 8 and walk through the list of capital construction projects there. All of them are listed as other funds. I see the designation there, but can you walk through those and identify the source of those funds for those projects?
Absolutely. So the SBC contingency S13 is SIPA. The next two, totaling $55.8 million at Guernsey and F.E. Warren here in Cheyenne, is 100% federally funded. The level 1, level 2 studies is from S13, also SIPA. The Boys School Maintenance Storage, also S13, SIPA. Stolt Hall is the unique one. We have S0, and S0 is simply a term that it means, the definition is a fund as defined by footnote, and footnote 2A defines that fund to be reversions from this biennium. So the first $25 million of general fund reversions would go towards Stolt Hall, and it would be supplemented by $12 million in SIPA funds. The Jackson Outreach Center, that's largely funded with federal ARPA capital construction funds, and this $1 million also comes from SIPA. Enzi Center is 100% private funds, local resources, in the amount of $33 million. And finally, the Helibase at the Office of State Lands and Investments for $7.5 million, also coming out of SIPA. One of your handouts, which I will not go through in detail, but may be of benefit for your colleagues on the floor or after you go home, explaining this to your constituents, provides a listing of all of the capital construction projects that are in this bill and the ones that are not, which is important as well. The ones that are not principally are the Veterans Home in Buffalo and the Riverton State Office Building, although there is a carryover provision for that.
And Mr. Richards, can you remind us why the Enzi Center, which is funded all with private funds for $33 million, is in our budget?
It is an unusual practice, I admit to that. The issue there is the legislature's only ability to limit or control square footage is through an authorization of programs. And once you authorize this, to the extent that college qualifies for state funds, it will also qualify for major maintenance funds. So for example, that college needs to have the 4 mills and be accredited. Both of those conditions are not yet met. But in, let's say, 2 years from now, if those conditions are met, this facility would go on the state rolls for major maintenance funding.
Thank you.
And Don, what's the balance of SIPA?
We'll touch base on that, but after everything is done, one of your motions was claw back the transfer of general funds to SIPA to the maximum extent possible. The maximum extent possible, in our opinion, ended up being $55 million, and the balance of SIPA will be $1.1 million if you approve this bill and all other bills.
And what was the balance, expendable balances before we started?
Mr. Richards?
Madam Chairman, Representative Nicholas, you started off with a rather modest balance of $3 million, but it has income in the amount of $238 million going to it. You needed to supplement that with an additional $119 million from the general fund. So your next question is probably going to be, well, where did all that money go? We're only spending, $34 million on capital construction. The biggest expenditure was $168 million for statewide major maintenance was paid for out of SIPA. You also had 2 one-time appropriations to the University of Wyoming SER for one-time research projects that was also out of SIPA.
75. No, that's 17 million.
19 million, Mr.
All right, thank you, Mr. Richards. We can go back to page 9.
Returning to the report on page 9, I believe we're on page 101, lines 17 and 18 of the budget bill. And what a timely request, because this is the reduction of the transfer from the general fund to SIPA. That amount in the original bill was 174 million, and we've reduced that to 119, or a reduction of $55 million. The reason being is largely the savings you have in capital construction. On page 101, line 23, 24, 25, and 26, this relates to the reduction of the appropriation or deposit into the Permanent Wyoming Mineral Trust Fund reserve account. Initially, the bill was at 190 million, and the action of this committee reduced it to 40 million. Page 102, lines 10, 11, and 13. This is an additional appropriation of $15,107,000 from the federal land transfer at the military department to the Common School Permanent Land Fund reserve account. I believe that was, again, Madam Co-Chair's motion. Page 102, line 25 and 26 is a reduction of the deposit into the State Museum account from 10 million to 5 million. Page 103, after line 14 is...
So, Madam Co-Chair, committee, I wonder if we want to, we could entertain the possibility of allowing allowing part of this money, the 5 million that we now have in there, to be matched with private donations, to start growing the balance of that account. And if so, if we could put language in the budget that would reflect that.
Mr. Richards, are we allowed to do that? With private funds. Mr. Richards?
Madam Co-Chairman, that's certainly within the purview of a free committee.
Is that a motion, Representative?
I would make that motion.
Been moved and seconded. Further discussion? Senator Guru?
Just want to make sure I understand, you saved just some $5 million on a one-to-one match to just allow that to build up to 10, so, and use in private funds, their private PR. Okay, thank you.
Don?
Mr. Richards?
Madam Chair, I just wanted to clarify whether it's a requirement to match or just an allowance to match.
Yeah, an allowance.
And no Senator Guru also mentioned $10 million. There's no $10 million in this scenario. One-to-one match, there's 5 million available on a one-to-one match. Further discussion? All those in favor, raise your hands. Any opposed? All right, that motion has passed.
Members of the committee, I should return just up the page 101, line 23. That makes the deposit of $100 million not effective immediate. So this is the question of whether the deposit to the corpus is before June 30th of this year or after July 1, and you've moved it to after July 1.
Richards, this would be $100 million that we're putting into savings into the corpus of the Permanent Mineral Trust Fund, is that correct?
That's correct.
And this comes out as an appropriation in our budget, correct?
It does. The language we do use is transfer, but on all of our summary documents, it shows up as an appropriation to savings.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman.
Mr. Co-Chairman?
And remind me, but it sticks in my mind that we fluctuated back and forth in doing that immediately or at the end of the fiscal year, kind of trying to determine how it best reflect on just the budget as we look at it during session, and this is where we settled.
Madam Chairman, that is correct.
Thank you.
All right, keep going, Mr. Richards.
Page 103, after line 14, you added a new subsection O. The House position was to deposit $40 million in the 988 System Trust. The action of the committee moved that to $20 million. Page 126, lines 1 and 2.
Mr. Co-Chair,
Madam.
since we've been taking motions throughout, I'm going to go ahead and make another motion right now. On this issue, I make a motion that we reduce the appropriation to the 988 fund from 20 million to 10 million.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. All those, please raise your hands. In favor? Any opposed? That motion has passed.
At the bottom of page 9, top of page 10, this is just a reference now. Now section 337, this gets a little bit complicated, but the reversion of SIPA funds from the CWC Jackson Outreach Center in the amount of $10.335 million, 9.33.
Mr. Co-Chairman?
Mr. Richards, please, could you just tell me, we're on page 10 and give me the reference again, please?
Yes, it's the last item on page 9, which refers to page 126, line 1. And on your report, the top line of page 10, which says page 126, line 2 of the budget bill. It looks like some innocuous language. It actually is pretty important language. And this is the transfer of the reverted funds from the CWC Jackson Outreach Center, which reverted $10.335 million. And $9.335 million is reappropriated for purposes of community college matching funds. And you'll recall there's a whole section on how that community college matching funds occurs. Every college, including Gillette College, gets $1 million. If they meet the deadline, which I believe is April 2026, then they can go for the pot or any unmatched dollars. Page 129, lines 19, 20, and on the top of page 130, this all relates to the Rock Springs High School. There is an additional $150 million, and the legislature added a priority for Sweetwater School District Number 1 High School. And in particular, we have a subparagraph that states, I believe the motion indicated, the authorization for expenditures is for construction and demolition or disposition of a Sweetwater County School District Number 1 High School.
And Mr. Richards, the source of these funds?
This is school foundation program funds.
And was this previously in our budget that we agreed to delete the $200 million we had set aside for large school projects?
Madam Chair, that is correct, and that's the motion. The first part of that motion was the one you clarified as your first motion from Senator Gurray.
Thank you.
Page 135, lines 13 and 14 is a reduction for the UW research. That's the Center for Flow Through Porous Media. The House position was at 75 million. The Senate position eliminated this, and the action of the Joint Conference Committee moved it to 50 million.
Mr. Co-Chair, I have another motion as we're right here. I move to reduce that appropriation from 50 million down to 40 million, so a reduction of $10 million. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Any opposed? Representative Nicholas is opposed. That motion has passed.
Page 137, after line 22, this relates to the motion you've now reduced to $40 million. I believe this was a Representative Walters friendly amendment, which directed the Board of Trustees to establish a resource and facility use policy at the high bay, and the resulting use should be summarized within the budget requests as submitted under statute. That's our attempt to incorporate appropriate response.
Madam Chairman,
Mr.
Mr.
Co-Chair?
Richards, do you need, we're okay there, we don't need any action?
As long as it meets the intent of the sponsor, I think we're good.
Okay, thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you.
All of the language at the bottom of page 10, beginning on page 139, line 26 of the budget bill, through the top 3 lines of page 11 on your report, relate to specifications of previously appropriated funds in the amount of $2.8 million, I believe, for a facility, and making it more specific with respect to being on a National Historic Landmark or Register list and in a community of a specific size. You'll recall there's an ancillary part of this motion, and that is another $2.5 million in this same section is available broadly under the Wyoming Community Facilities Program. Page 148, lines 4, 5, 6, all relates to a reduction in large projects. The House position and JAC was at $200 million for large energy matching funds. This committee reduced that to $150 million. The Senate position, as I recall, was 0.
Mr. Co-Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
I hereby move to reduce that appropriation from $150 million to $100 million, so a reduction of $50 million. All those in favor, please raise your hands.
Madam Chairman,
Mr. Co-Chairman?
so that was canned on the source of those funds then, is that change at all for you?
Mr. Co-Chairman, it does, and I'll provide a corresponding motion here as soon as we vote on that reduction.
Thank you.
It's currently, so any opposed to that reduction of $50 million? That motion has passed. Representative Larson is opposed to that motion, or I'm sorry, Representative Walters opposed to that motion. So that has been reduced by $50 million. My second motion is to change the source of funding from the general fund to the LSRA. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please raise your hand. House members, please raise your hands one more time. Any opposed? Representative Summers is opposed. That motion has passed.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think we're on page 157, lines 4, 5, and 8. This is a reduction of employee compensation from $18.3 million to $9.15 million. In addition, on page 157, line 8, there's a change in date, making this appropriation effective in fiscal year 2025. And finally, the balance of this page on page 11 reduces all of the distributions by 1/2. So on line 12, that's the executive branch reduction to $5.3 million. Line 21 is a reduction for the University of Wyoming to $2.3 million. Line 27 is a reduction for community colleges to $1.2 million. And finally, on line 8, at the bottom of page 11, is a reduction to $314,000 for the judicial branch. On the top of page 12, page 159, this provides that the $9.15 million would be biennialized, that is doubled and included in the next standard budget. All of the remaining items are new Section 300s, so they're a little bit easier for you and your colleagues to digest because there's not any delete and replace and insert. The first Section 330 is for law enforcement duty death benefits. I wanted to point your attention to the last phrase in subsection B, which provides a connection to Senate File 47 and indicating that the death benefit in that bill must be at least 90% or have similar effect.
Are you going to make a motion, Senator?
I would move to eliminate under Section 330, small a, small b, have to do with law enforcement.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? That motion is passed.
Mr. Chairman,
Representative Stitt?
Madam Chairman, just to clarify, we just deleted subsection B only, is that correct? Or did we delete both?
The whole thing is deleted. Paragraphs A and B.
Okay, thank you.
And the reason why we deleted that section is this language providing a 90% death benefit to the spouse of a law enforcement officer killed in the line of duty. There was a bill that addressed this issue that passed out of the Senate this morning, so it will be on the governor's desk. It's anticipated he will likely approve that. That amendment was based in the law enforcement retirement bill, so actually more appropriately placed there as an amendment to that bill. We did put it into the budget bill as an amendment by members, I think, of the House and Senate. As a result of it no longer being necessary to be in the budget bill, we are now striking it because of its passage in another Senate file.
It also makes it permanent, so I don't think it's requires that taxes permanently. There's actually more in the bill, back to A going away, that has to do with children. It can actually go up to 100%. So it's, the bill's actually more expansive than our amendment was.
All right, thank you, Senator. All right, Section 331.
Section 331 provided $15 million for K-12 school district mental health service grants. The House position, as I recall, was 18.3 million, 18.5 million, and the Senate position removed this.
Mr. Co-Chairman, I move to reduce this appropriation from $15 million to $10 million, so a reduction of $5 million. It's been moved and seconded. Further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Or raise your hand. That motion has passed. Are any opposed? Raise your hand. Opposed by Senator Jones, Garou, Summers. That motion has passed.
Members of the committee, the next page, page 13, provides for a authorization for a charter school in western Wyoming, section 332. Section 333.
Madam Chair.
Senator Dockstader. Senator Dockstader made a motion to remove section 332, which was authorizing language without an appropriation for a charter school in western Wyoming. Is there a second?
I don't think I want it. I'll second it for discussion purposes.
Discussion?
Yeah, I do. Senator Doxler, would you like to go first?
Certainly. We could probably use some more time. There's a question of, I guess, why is that in there at this time and why am I here? So rather than to raise the question, then I just simply remove it.
Madam Chairman, I was
Senator
one.
Driscoll?
Madam Chairman, I was the one that brought it, not Senator Dockstader. I've worked extensively on this potential project, was part of the bill. I think it's important and it's timely. And if someone wants to raise an ire about why it's here or not here, schools are definitely fall within the purview of this bill. And I think this is timely. We potentially can get a start on getting into one of our areas that's extensively overcrowded in that area. And it's timely to get a fast start on it. We've got some people that have worked extensively on it. I understand the appearance for you, Senator Dockstader. For me, there is none. It's across the state. It's the other side. I've been a charter school guy all along, and I think this is a timely school in the right place.
You have been an ardent supporter of charter schools, much to my dismay, much of the time. Further discussion? Are you ready to vote? Question being called. All those in favor of Senator Dockstader's motion to strike section 332, raise your hands. All those opposed, raise your hands. That motion has failed.
Members of the committee, the next section for your consideration is budget balance transfers to section 333. This is a carryover provision from the 23-24 biennium for revenues into the 25-26 biennium. I think this one was part of the budget balancers. It is being used for a variety of purposes. So this one, I think, is not maybe a focus like the next one is, which I will ask for your indulgence on.
Okay.
Section 334, which is budget balancers transfers 3. This was the House position to provide space for any joint conference committee to operate within. Under your current goldenrod, there is now a need with the beginning of this meeting for $93.2 million to be transferred from the LSRA to the budget reserve account. So this amount could have been reduced to, for example, $100 million. I do have some caution that there are other bills that are still being discussed, several of which have material fiscal impact, such as property taxes. I think you have some debate on water bill. I have not heard the resolution of. Nonetheless, I believe you have also reduced a fair bit of money in this, in your action today. With that, I'll look to, he's not there. So my lifeline is not there, but my,
We can come back to it, Mr. Richards,
no,
if you'd
no,
like. Yeah.
my math is that there will be a deposit from the budget reserve account to the LSRA in the amount of around $77 million. So you flipped it the other way. So at the end of the biennium, there will actually be a transfer to the LSRA. Historically, prior committees have included language similar to this, maybe at a reduced amount. There is a current provision in the 23-24 bill that allows transfer of 115 million, for example. So this is not unusual and provides some stability. So, but I guess I would say that the 250 is probably too high. If the committee wanted to reduce that in the neighborhood of 100 million, I think you would be more than safe to do so.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Richards, thank you. Representative Walters.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would move to change the 250 million to 100 million.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Any opposed? That motion has passed.
Madam Chair,
Representative Larson?
Don, just to make sure I understand this section 234 accurately, it says that we're transferring the 100 million from the LSRA to the budget reserve account. But now we've been able to flip that, and it looks like we'll be able to transfer about 77 million from the budget reserve account to the LSRA. So we've got that turned around and headed in the right direction. So, but is that reflected in this language?
The transfer to the LSRA is provided under statute, so you're always okay with that.
Okay.
I think you can debate whether you can eliminate 334 in its entirety. You may be able to. Even when it has, like this year is a great example, it's in there even though you don't need it. The reason being is it provides a backstop for unknown legislation on property taxes, unknown activities in your supplemental budget if you don't have a supplemental budget. So it's a safety valve only. It is not necessary if you want to remove it.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have no motion to move it. I just needed to clarify it in my mind. Thank you.
So why do we use the word shall?
Mr. Representative Nicholas, Madam Chairman, this is a
Mr. Richards, we're going to take a 5-minute recess because there's a lot happening coming at me from both sides. Can you do that? Yeah, so we're just going to take a brief 5 minutes, handle a couple of logistics. We'll be right back. And then, Mr. Richards, I'm going to ask a question that won't repeat, but whether or not this is considered a savings or not, generally. We cut all the halves.
Can't travel this year.
Do you remember what it's like now? No surprises like that with me. All right, we are back from our recess. I appreciate that. Mr. Richards, we were on section 334, where we reduced that transfer from 250 million down to 100 million. And before we officially broke, I'd asked maybe for an explanation from you or further overview on how generally we evaluate that decision. Is it considered a savings? Is it just considered a transfer? How does it change our bottom line?
Madam Chairwoman, this would not qualify as savings. This is a contingent backfill. Right now, as I indicated, we don't anticipate that you will need this under the January Craig projections. This is a what if, and it would come out of savings in the event it is needed, as opposed to being deposited into savings. I think co-chairman of the JAC committee asked whether or not it might be best if it were a shall, and I think this language is intended to be contingent only if necessary. So only if you start to burn through that statutory 5% would this come into play.
Thank you. Any further questions? All right, please continue.
Section 335 is authorization of $3.4 million. This is money that not only exists previously, but it was previously appropriated. However, there were limits on the appropriation that it could only be used for demolition. And at the work at the state hospital, they determined that for purposes of some multi-year work at that facility, they wanted to construct a storage building. I believe it's a metal storage building. So this allows them to construct that storage building. Section 336 authorizes any unexpended funds from the Riverton State Office Building. That was a $2.5 million appropriation. Is reappropriated for purposes of renovation if it is not expended. Section 337 is the CWC Jackson Outreach Center reversion of $10.3 million. You saw back in the capital construction where they received 1 million of that, and 9.3 million was redeployed to community college matching funds. Section 338 and 339, I did want to point your attention to, this is the acceptance of property transfer at the Gillette Community College District from both the county, Campbell County, the city of Gillette and Northern Wyoming Community College District. And we do have the same language: to the extent the facilities qualify and the college district qualifies, then these facilities would be eligible for major maintenance. Section 340 on page 15 provides $2.5 million from SIPA for a recreation center matched 1-to-1 in the community of Riverton. Section 341 is FTE reduction in the executive branch. The Senate's position was a reduction of 42 positions. The House position was 0. And I think you ended up at a 57% towards the Senate position and reduced 24 full-time positions that are vacant on July 1, 2024. Finally, I believe the last section for your consideration is section 342. This is the ARPA Act. I did want to direct your attention to subsection M. M as in Mary on the top of page 18. This is essentially all of the Senate language with the addition of subsection N, which provides that this language prevails over Senate File 132, which does have different language in it. That bill also has a Trump language in it. I did not follow all of the action on the floor this morning in the House as to whether this bill has been considered. So now you have Trump language versus Trump language, and so there is some uncertainty as to which will prevail. And the guidance that our council has provided in the past is if you have something similar that conflicts, it is the last signature. and not your signatures in the presiding officer's chairs, but the governor's signature on adoption, or, of course, he could veto that, but you've created a bit of uncertainty as to which vehicle will remain.
So, Mr. Richards, just for clarity for folks listening, I can see some confusion out on the faces. There's the ARPA bill that's currently in the House, and it says that the bill should prevail if there is some type of appropriation or mention in the budget bill. This section 342 in the budget bill also indicates that it should prevail in the event that there is some other bill currently working through the House. And so that's in conflict with each other, and the governor will unwind it all. Representative Sommers?
Madam Chairman, I mean, we still, I think, still have the ability in the House to make a runner amendment, so.
You sure can.
I'll try to put that in my head and get that done.
Representative Larson?
Madam Chairman, Mr. Speaker, that amendment's drafted with the sponsor.
All right, sounds like it might be remedied. Representative Nicholas?
I do.
Representative Nicholas?
I want to go back to section 341,
340.
because I thought we had discussion about giving him some extra time to pick those positions.
A little closer to your mic.
So on section 341, it appears that the governor has to select those 24 positions by or on or as of July 1st, 2024. And I thought we had discussion to give him 6 months or something to actually, so he wouldn't have to pick them all on one day.
Would you like that to be your motion, Representative Nicholas, or Mr. Richards?
Madam Chairman, it's the vacant positions as of that day, and then the governor has 1 month, may not be sufficient. On the top of page 16, the governor has to report on August 1st which of those positions, and then he has another month through September 1st to identify any general fund savings. And keep in mind, these positions are not specified, even in the original Senate motion, that they have to be generally funded. They could be YDOT positions, PSC positions, oil and gas positions, federally funded
So,
positions.
Madam Chair, yeah, I'd like to make a motion to make that he has 3 months to identify, and then another month after that to report.
Madam Chairman,
Representative Stitt?
and then I support the motion. However, I also wanted to ask if it'd be a friendly amendment to change July 1 to June 30th, 2024. And the purpose of that amendment is because we just have added some positions to various agencies that we think are really important. So DEQ, air quality engineers, and we don't want our chief executive, if he disagreed with the new positions we've created, the July 1 date would allow him to actually cut the positions that we've just authorized. And so I don't think that's our intent. So I think I don't know if it's a friendly amendment to add June 30th to that, or if you'd like that as a separate motion.
Representative Stitt, did we authorize any positions that he did not request? Do you recall?
Madam Chairman, I believe we did. There are at least 2 that I'm aware of.
Representative Larson?
Madam Chairman, there were 2 positions, I believe, in Department of Environmental Quality that he denied, that we went ahead and funded. And I cannot recall if any of those were effective immediately.
So
Representative Nicholas, do you find that friendly?
what I would suggest is we just add language that says that none of them can be the positions that we created in this budget.
Madam Chairman, if we accomplish the same goal,
Yeah.
I don't have a preference. I thought June 30th was slightly more elegant, but
I agree with you, Representative Stitt. Representative Nicholas, would you like to go with your language? Should
Well,
we give him a win? Give
Some
him
of
a
those
win.
positions we made effective immediately, but I think it's just easier if we're explicit in saying that you can't cut the ones we created.
Mr. Richards, do you understand the motion?
Madam Chairman, in section 341A, I think you want to strike "of the newly authorized" and say "of unfilled positions not increased as of a certain date," or use strike the of newly authorized under both scenarios, and then use the June 30th language. There are the 2 DEQ positions, there's at least 2 in the Department of Education that would be eligible July 1. However, they would have several months, 3 months to fill those DEQ positions. So if you use the Representative Stith approach with the strike of the newly authorized, I think you would accomplish your intents.
Okay, no, I consider that friendly.
So there's been a motion and a second. Everyone understand the motion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? All right, that motion is passed. All right, so we are back on finishing up 342, I think 343.
Madam
Representative
Chairman,
Sommers?
I'm sure that the 3-month delay was the same, that was part of that motion, right? So we have all of that in one motion.
Mr. Richards?
That's how we understood it, so it would be
Okay.
not later than October 1st, the governor would report, and then you have 1 month to identify the savings, November 1st.
All right, please continue.
Madam Chairman, I believe that concludes the presentation of the budget. I did have one other document, and I'm glad it has draft on it, given your actions today, because this will, I think you have reduced additional spending on the order of $75 million from 2 different accounts. So we will update those, obviously. If there is no further motions, and I'm not trying to cut that off, I understand that the bodies might commence work as early as 8 a.m. It will take us several hours this afternoon and evening to reproduce this report, but if we could ensure that at least 3 members of both sides would be willing to sign this report and be available between 7:30 and 8 o'clock to submit that to the floors for your presentation.
Can I get 3 volunteers from
Lloyd and
each
Wolfers are
side?
usually get here at 5:30. so-
All right, we have Senators Garou, Jones, and Nethercott, and Representative Larson, Walters, and Sommers on the House side.
So,
We will be here at 7:30 a.m.
Madam Chair, I did have one more amendment on
Representative Nicholas.
Section 342
Section 342?
regarding that ARPA language did you craft something?
I have not drafted anything, but I think there is a desire to direct an additional appropriation. I didn't get the amount.
It's 2 million would be directed, if eligible, directed to the city of Wheatland for their water project, their water tank. Yeah. So it's directing $2 million of ARPA to a water tank in Wheatland for it, if it qualifies, as approved by Kevin, to help finish the rebuilding and reconstruction of the water tank that they have there that's losing,
Effective immediately.
yeah, yes.
We are talking ARPA funds right now. Further discussion on Representative Nicholas's motion? You know how I hate working the specifics of ARPA. Senator Garou, discussion?
Question, Madam Chair, for the bringer. Have they received any ARPA funds for this project so far?
The answer is he believes they have.
Well, we got Mr. ARPA over here.
I'm not so sure that they have ARPA, but where they have, they've got that Phelion water tank, they've come before SLIB, they've come downstairs, we just voted to, they went through the water bill to try to get, they need about 1.82 million, something like that, to finish it up. So we're gonna put it in that ARPA bill this afternoon and wanted to do the same thing in this motion here.
Senator Driscoll?
We're to pay for it one way or another. We just gotta make one last use of it because it's truly an emergency. It's gonna have to be dealt with, so it's gonna come out of somewhere.
Mr. Co-Chair, how do they feel about receiving federal funds? If they're not in support of receiving federal funds, then I don't support the appropriation. Does anyone have an answer of whether or not the community wants to receive federal funds?
I,
All right, seeing that no one has that answer, are you ready to vote?
we are.
All those in favor, raise your hand. A coup.
Oh, that's evil.
Wheatland shall receive its federal funds. All right, that motion has passed. All right. I am are you opposed, Representative Walters? Senator Nethercott and Representative Walters are opposed. Thank you.
Just the chairman,
All right, Senator Driscoll.
great leadership.
No, thank you. All right, anything further from this brilliant joint conference committee? That will certainly not do anything right the following day.
Sorry, Madam Chairman, if I understand correctly, then we've made the final actions on the joint conference committee. And so, Mr. Chairman, or Mr. Richardson, before we adjourn from this conference committee, we need to vote on our actions.
Mr. Chairman, you actually need to sign the report
In the morning.
in the morning.
No further action by us as a whole.
That's correct.
Thank you, just for clarification.
Madam Chairman?
Representative Stiff.
Madam Chairman, I just wanted to take a moment to thank staff for their work on this budget. It's just been tremendous how they turn around documents so quickly and accurately. I think we all feel that way, but since this may be our last meeting of this committee, I just wanted to say that.
Madam Chairman, the question I have in my mind then, Mr. Richards, is from the joint appropriation budget bill that we passed out, do we have any final numbers that you could share with us? And if you don't, that's fine, we can get them later.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Madam Chairman, excuse me, Representative Larson, you'll recall that the House position added approximately $360 million to the budget from all fund sources, and the Senate position reduced the budget by $767 million from all sources. Through your action at the beginning of this meeting, you had come to a ground of a reduction of total spending from the JAC version of $99 million, just shy of 100 for round number purposes. I believe you've cut at least $75 million more and then added $2 million of ARPA funds. The $75 million were state, general, and traditional funds, LSRA and the like. At the beginning of this meeting, you were at 39.8% towards the House position and the Senate position. I think, and I will need to run these numbers, but I believe you're in the neighborhood of 47.5% between the two positions. And I don't like, I'll fully admit, I don't like using these numbers because there's double counting and there's movement of funds from the left pocket to the right pocket. So I sorry to include that commentary, but just as one small example, the state is purchasing land from itself, and then it's moving those funds twice. And it's counted in a bureaucratic method as a $31 million increase to your budget.
So Don, to say it another way, when I gave our presentation on the floor of the House at the beginning of the session, we had this $1 billion, $1.1 billion difference. We had the $1.1 billion difference. But if you eliminated the money swaps and moving A to B, we were closer to a $500 million difference. And so, and the differences we've made are real dollars. And so I think you need to walk us backwards a little bit so we can understand what the real impacts are without the swaps. Because
But for
my guess
clarity,
is,
Mr. Co-Chairman, or
go ahead.
Representative Nicholas, what we have accomplished today, based on the calculation of the $1 billion difference and using that similar application, we have reached a 47% compromise between the House and the Senate differences. That $1 billion difference being created from House and Senate amendments and the differences between the two on the budget. We have reached a virtual down-the-middle compromise, despite being outnumbered.
Well, and I would say it's probably the other way around. If you took out the swaps, it's probably 60 Senate, 40 House.
If you give us a 2.5.
So they feel like they've lost. That means we've won.
There's no shortage of whining over here.
Can't we do the old days, Bob?
Okay.
Jump up and get pissed now?
Okay,
Thank you, Don.
thanks, Don.
Thanks, Don. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Meeting is adjourned.